I do not know how I will pair those 2 together, and I'll have to figure that out. Yes, good morning, Karen. Nice to see you. All right. So basically where I was at is I don't ever want anyone to feel like I am preaching from a pulpit. You can see and hear me. Love that for us. Um, this has been my own decolonization journey, right? Like that time. So what I was talking about before I left was my first husband was in the United States Air Force and we were stationed in North Dakota. I come from the South Bronx. Okay. And I think that that's a huge thing that we need to think about when we're thinking about America is the scale of the United States of America. I don't even know if I knew North Dakota existed, like outside of like sixth grade geography or something, right? So the idea of actually being there or knowing its history or any of those sorts of things was so far beyond my scope or imagination. I really didn't even see myself off of my block, to be honest with you, right? So when we were invited to go on to the reservation in North Dakota, I was like, "Oh, this is lovely," right? It was very novel to go and enjoy something like that. And the truth of the matter is prior to that, I had never thought about where were the indigenous of this land. And these are the truths that we have to sit with, that we have to just admit, that we have to be uncomfortable with. And I'm not saying everybody felt that way. I'm saying this is me, this is my journey. And if you are in that same position, there is zero shame about that, right? This is truth telling, this is honesty, this is accountability. So when I realized that, and then I offered how multiple truths can be held, right? For me, it was novel, it was beautiful to experience a powwow, to be on the reservation as a Black American who is, who hears the tales and stories of 40 acres and a mule and knowing that we were denied that, right? And like reparations were paid to the people that actually owned us and not us exactly. I used to hold the belief like, oh, well, it must be nice. Like, they got reservations, they're sovereign, they get medical coverage, all of these things. And then one day it hit me and I'm like, no, that is wrong also, Des, right? But it's a depth, it's a journey, right? And so the example that I was giving was like, I have my home, I own my house. So imagine if somebody comes and turns around and says, hey, well, we discovered this house, get out. Oh, but you can go live in the backyard in a tent. That is essentially what a reservation is, right? And that goes into the idea that expansion happens because of ingenuity. Expansion happens because people are so brave that they are forging ahead. And in that forging, it costs somebody something, right? There is a difference of, I talk about gentrification often, is like there's a difference between revitalization and gentrification. There was an option to come and live with the people of the land, right? But again, back to those 15 pillars of supremacy culture, power hoarding. And that means you need power over. And we need to be moving to power with each other. And you could see that in the opulence of the Gilded Age. And you see that today because people are 100% getting wealthy on Trump's economy, right? It's just the people that know how to do that and have been doing so for the longest. Yes, it was a shit show. So I'm like, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to pull all of these thoughts together, right? So basically, that is what I was talking about. Because again, I don't know if I could piece together the live that went down and this one. So if we can't, let's start again from the top. Number one, the Gilded Age as capitalism's cover story. The shine versus truth. The Gilded Age looked like progress, railroads, skyscrapers, industrial wealth, but that gilding was a thin layer covering deep exploitation. The people that paid the price were people like Black sharecroppers who were trapped in debt slavery, indigenous people pushed off of their land for resource extraction, and immigrant laborers crushed in unsafe factories, right? We do not talk enough about, the other day I made a post, I was like, it is wild. How did the grandchildren and the great grandchildren of canaries in the mine get convinced that the billionaire who's been shitting on a gold toilet since the 80s actually cares about them? Right? And that is American exceptionalism. That is whiteness, right? To believe that you are a displaced billionaire or millionaire instead of the exploited so they could be billionaires and millionaires is something that really needs to be deconstructed along with American exceptionalism because it always comes at a cost. And it comes at the cost of whomever they feel is disposable. How this conversation came about was in regard to I am seeing merch. I'm always seeing merch. I'm always seeing merch. Liberal white America will make merch before it ever makes a plan. So now we have the merch of the soldiers of Iwo Jima putting the flag there, which is beautiful, right? It is in a beautiful, I will never, ever not support my troops. And I will 100% hold a government to task that disposes of human beings for the growth of empire. Because that is really what that is. It is taking poor people and saying, hey, do you want a way out? Are you willing to die for it? Okay. So I don't ever want that to be conflated, right? And the picture is American iconography. Cannot deny that. But you have to ask yourself, is it truly a representation of anti-fascism? Right? So today's article I was writing, and I was like, America is a fascist nation, right? This is what it means to decenter whiteness. Like it has never not been fascist, right? And to put it as it fought fascism in Germany instead of one empire against another is American exceptionalism and whiteness at its best. It whiteness is one thing it's good about is selling itself. It's an amazing system of media manipulation. It has wonderful marketing, right? So it's like original Antifa since, and I'm like, more so Antifa since 1492. Right when the indigenous people were fighting back, and then Africans joined in on that fight in the 1600s. Nobody has been more anti-fascism than the indigenous and Black people, right? And you have to do that. You have to go deeper because when you have middle management, right, which is what liberal white America is the middle management of the pyramid scheme of whiteness there, pushing forth these narratives, it is still lauding up American exceptionalism. America has never been the hero. America is only the hero in the eyes of white people that are refusing to see the truth. And it is uncomfortable truth. It is something to sit with. It is something that then makes us question. I mean, again, I am not, what is happening here? But what keeps happening? Okay. Look, I'm not. Like I said, my first husband served in the Air Force. Much of my family served in the military. One, that is the only way poor people can get out of poverty. And even then, it's not a way out, but it's damn sure the most socialist society that we have is when you join the United States military. So this is not that. This is still a critique and analysis of capitalism and of elite the exploitation of poor people by the elite. Marianne says, I'm so enraged at our K-12 education. I am 60. Yeah, we should all be, right? I firmly, like, you know what? I don't care that he defunded the educational system. Pull your kids out, start micro schools, right? Like, join your local churches. Like, can I get your basement? And really just really start doing some decolonized education if we have any hope. Um, for future generations to know actual truth. And like I said, we can hold the multiplicities. It does not have to be the binary of good versus evil. It can simply be truth. It is why I share so much of myself in my own journey. Like I said, I had never in my life, at that time, I might have been 21 when we were living there and I went on the reservation. And prior to that, I had never thought about if I've ever seen an indigenous person. I had never thought about where did the indigenous people of this land go. That is exactly what American exceptionalism teaches us and indoctrinates us into, right? So this is not, ooh, white people bad. This is, let's deconstruct. Let's dismantle. Let's tear this down and let's do some unlearning to truthfully learn and see what we are doing, right? So, the cover story here for the talking point one is wealth was marketed as proof of democracy success, while violent suppression of labor uprisings, lynchings, and massacres were written out of the narrative, right? There were so many uprisings that we never share, we never talk about. And then when Black people bring that to the forefront, white people just want to be like, nah, that's not true. And it's like, no, it is. When Indigenous people are talking, they're like, no, it's not true, right? It's that idea that this land was conquered. And again, that poses, you know, this bravery, this look at me forging ahead, and I came from nothing and I conquered this land. And I'm like, first of all, you killed people with disease. We have to really talk about the truth here, right? Like disease is what killed a lot of the indigenous population, not, uh, n- not some impressive military acumen. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The reflection question I offered here is what progress stories are we being sold today that hide who is being dispossessed? Right. And we do not have to think about it in only colonialism in taking land, right? We could think about it in the fact that we are okay with stripping, people from Section 8 programs without giving, and believe me, I'm not somebody that thinks that Section 8 um, should be a lifelong thing. But I also cannot say that I deny the fact that capitalism as it exists now demands a lower class. It demands that people die from poverty. Right. So, what does that look like? Right. What does reformation look like? Okay. If you're telling people that they have 2 years on a social program that helps people not be homeless, are you working on getting them into homes? Is there going to be another section, some type of second tier to Section 8? Are you teaching home ownership? Are you going to put in special rates for people who have lower incomes? Are you going to get rid of the credit rating system, right? Because you're talking about people that are hardworking people. Section 8 is not given if you are just not working. That's not how that actually goes. So even that is a form of this idea of, dispossession, taking people out of homes. Where are they going? Where are they going? Firing people from their jobs. Where are they going? Rounding people up by ICE, dispossessing people of the land. Mexican people are indigenous. Like, we are still buying into the idea. Even when I hear progressive liberal conversations, they're like, nobody's illegal on stolen land. Fam, this is their land. I'll do you one better. They're actually indigenous to this land. Most of the West Coast is Mexico. Borders are not real. All of these things are so important to really put into context when you're doing this work, right? Talking point two, rage redirected, how capitalism manufactures enemies. Instead of directing anger at robber barons and the ruling elite, white rage was redirected towards Black people building wealth, right? That's where you get the birth of the Klan. This is where you get the Tulsa riots. This is where you get the Red Summer. Wilmington uprising was so violent for Black people. During the time of Reconstruction and the Gilded Age, a lot of Black people did rise to political power, right? They won elections, they moved forward, and there was true progress for the America that people claim that we live in. There was for a very brief moment, right? There was a realization that things could become equitable. And during that uprising alone was so violent, the massacre of Black people in power. And these are things that we are not taught, right? For Black History Month, I did a whole Black History Month and Irish History Month because I get 2 months. I did an entire outline for children to adults because I also teach my children this kind of stuff, right? And was like, here you go. Here's how you could teach this curriculum. Here's what you actually need to know. But these things are left out because they do not want you to recognize that, again, America is the violence in the center, right? So when you talk about indigenous sovereignty movement and the immigrant labor organizers, all of those things were quelled quietly, right? Because history has been written by the victors. And that is another one of those 15 pillars of supremacy culture, right? That worship of the written word. So if I tell you something, you're going to turn around and be like, that's not true. That's not what I read. And I'm like, we know what you read, but who gets to write it? right? Who's writing that story? We don't even have white women writing history. Like, we have literally like the elite white men and then white women coming alongside, like the daughters of the Confederacy during that time, pushing forward the narrative and ensuring that this is what went in because they didn't want their men to look bad in history. I get it, girl. I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, stand by your man. But also, where's your stories, right? This is how white women continue to uphold white patriarchy at harm for themselves. This is the both and, right? That's that multiple truth. So holding all of these things is huge work, guys. Huge. And again, if you are doing this work and showing up, recognize that you are doing big work, right? This is a stripping back of everything you've ever known and an awakening to something else. And then when you awaken to that, you realize there's so much bigger work to be done. Again, this was born from watching that merch and like, God, now you guys have this talking point and it's wrong yet again. And we have to keep going back in these circles, right? So, divide and conquer comes from this, right? Capitalism thrives when workers fight each other instead of the system. Racism and supremacy culture were the tools used to fracture solidarity. If you turn around and tell a poor white man that he's better than any black man, you are going to have a loyal subject to capitalism. Right? They're going to believe that they can too be a robber baron. They too can be a Trump, right? Like they are displaced millionaires, like we said before, right? Lisa says temporary inconvenience millionaires. In my mind, I also am an inconvenience millionaire. I should definitely be a millionaire with the work that I put out there. But I also recognize that that's not how capitalism works, right? That's just not how it works. If I said different things in different sorts of ways, maybe possibly but there's a lot of barriers to that. And one of those main barriers is that capitalism needs an underclass. And to consistently believe that you are not going to be a part of that underclass is absolutely delusional and violent to self, and in turn, violent to those who are more marginalized than you are in this system of oppression. So, the continuity, we see the same playbook today. People are told to blame the immigrants, welfare queens, trans kids, like instead of the billionaires and corporations hoarding wealth, right? Like, this is literally, we're watching it over and over and over again. It's always somebody else that is stopping you. It is always someone else, right? We see this with the farmers of Arkansas. They were already screwed the first Trump presidency and they voted him in again. And now they are crying and asking for a bailout, which is terrible. But to that, I ask, when are you going to be in solidarity with those who are marginalized alongside you and more so? Right? I don't think that anybody should be displaced. I don't think that anybody should be worried about being housed or eating. So I am concerned and I'm wondering, when does solidarity begin, guys? When do we turn around and say, you know what? And we start looking. And we start looking and pointing and saying, it's not us, it's them. And what are we going to do about them? How are we going to do this? And I'm not even on the eat the rich energy. I am on some like, listen, this is a dying thing. The project is over. Let us, redistribute the wealth and start all over again. Like, wrap up the monopoly game. You won. You won. If you are a billionaire, you won capitalism. You have fucking won. Like, there's no more you could do. You won. Can we wrap it up, redistribute the wealth, and start all over again? Let's play a different game, right? Let's do anything different, right? Just something else. Taylor says lack of collective is our self. What is our self owned? I need you to say that again because my brain did not register that at all. Um, and I think what you're saying is like lack of collective care is to our own self detriment. And if that's correct, I agree. But yeah, we do, it needs to be all people because everybody is impacted at different levels of this oppression. Yes, even the funky ass billionaire, right? And at the end of the day, they just need to stop playing this game and redistribute the wealth. This is exhausting already. I don't know anything about soccer. So I'm gonna believe you. But I can't say yay or nay to that because I know nothing about sports. I just show up to the sports games that my kids want to play. So, reflection question for talking point 2. When you feel anger about injustice, where is it being directed? At your neighbor or at the system, right? And I see this too often with regular people who are just doing better in capitalism. Right. I am not upset at the person who is doing better in capitalism. I'm not upset at that middle class person. Hell, I know a few millionaires that I'm not upset with. Right. Like they have enough that they are living comfortably in capitalism, and their children may live well and they operate as ethically as one can within the system. That being said, though, there are people that are absolutely exploiting land and people in order to have riches beyond understanding and comprehension or beyond what they or any of their generations would absolutely need. Taylor says, we remain splintered because we're taught there's no value in collective belonging. Yes. Yeah. And I am absolutely exhausted by that idea because, as someone who lives deeply connected in community and in very intersectional community, and I see how it impacts my life and makes my life so much better because of the collective care that I provide and that I receive. And that is literally, I talked about that during those 100 days of community, how we're going to have to live smaller. Right. This is a dying empire, right? We are not looking to reform it, but we are looking to how we are going to survive the death of it. And that is going to come through collective care, right? Yesterday was supposed to be the rapture. I was very disappointed that that did not happen. Because I had a few people I was waiting on. Like there's tons of Christian nationalists that I was like, oh, this would be lovely to wake up to, and be left behind. I'm okay with being left behind. But collective care, moving smaller, being deeply intentional is the answer to surviving a dying, decaying empire. The own goal is when you score against yourself. Oh, okay. So that makes sense now. Taylor had said like an own goal in soccer, and I did not understand that. And then she said the own goal is when you score against yourself. Yeah, Tiffany's laughing at the rapture. I was sad. I was sad. I'm not gonna lie. I woke up this morning. I was like, "Fuck, it didn't happen," and I was so ready, like to be like, "Woohoo! Party in my house. We've been left behind, girl." But alas, we have survived yet another rapture. But I also wanted to think about Christian nationalism and the death cult that it is, right? Because I talk about that too. In a belief system that needs the rapture for things to get better, friends, what they're going to do is make the rapture happen, right? I talk about that with the dispossession and the genocide of Palestinian people. I am very mindful and very aware that it actually feeds Christian nationalism and Christian Zionism. They are clearing that land because they believe that they are the chosen people. I need you to put that in your head because this is not going to get any better. This is going to get collectively worse. And hating Jews is not new, right? Blaming Jewish people. And there's accountability to be held from Israel and that government in regard to what it looks like for conditional whiteness to be running you and how lack of solidarity. There are other people that are going to be impacted, Jewish people that are going to be impacted by Christian Zionism, right? They really firmly believe every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And baby, if you not, welcome to the Crusades, right? Like this is not new. That's the sad part. Because says Y2K and 2012 didn't work out for them either. It did not. It did not. I think this is like the third or fourth rapture. I'm not sure that I've lived through. And could be more, but just that I can recall. But all of these things still come down to they're going to continue to push forward this narrative because there is a cult belief that these things have to come to pass in order for utopia, in order for paradise, right? In order for unity, the irony of it, right? So again, ask yourself when you feel anger about injustice, where is it being directed? At your neighbor or at the system? I want us to be consistently keeping our foot on necks of systems. Where are they? constantly critiquing systems, all systems, systems of whiteness, systems of patriarchy, systems of, childism, system of ableism, cis heteronormativity. All of these systems, capitalism, need to be critiqued and analyzed in a very real way. Who is this impacting, right? When we were doing the 100 Days of Community, I asked you, who's not in the room? Ask yourself that. Instead of trying to be the savior speaking for those not in the room, why are they not in the room? Where are they at? It's 2025. Everybody should be in the room. And if not, you need to bust down the walls. We need, there needs to be no barriers, right? None whatsoever. Nobody needs to be talking for anybody. There's room for everybody to have a conversation. What are we doing? How are we doing that? Talking point 3. From gilded luxury to liberal merch. Think. The pattern. In the Gilded Age, elite wealth was flaunted in mansions and excess. Today, the cover story is softer. T-shirts, mugs, slogans like the original Antifa, right? We'll see people get very wealthy, even if it's just a survival wealth off of this idea of American exceptionalism, and you're still not critiquing the system. Lisa says, then you got the folks in cults like Heaven's Gate. I'm exhausted thinking, right? I like, there are so many variations a, of the death cult. And it's so sad when you think about Christianity had started as a true uprising against empire. And it's so sad to see how it became rebranded through the Roman Empire to today, right? And how it has become an absolute death cult. Like, you should die for your beliefs. We see that with Charlie Kirk, right? He has all of a sudden become sanitized. He is the most Christian person that we have going in 2025. And his wife is now the martyr of Christian forgiveness. She forgives the man who has murdered her husband. And it is a sad, sad reckoning. Thinking of the words, right? It's a sad reckoning when you know the history and the truth behind where these things started and where we are landing and what we are doing. And what I want us to be focusing on is, like I said, surviving the dying of an empire, because it's got to go. There's no reformation, folks. If you are here with me and you think I'm ever talking about reformation, you are wrong. And maybe I have not said that enough. I am not looking for reformation. I am looking for a rebuilding of something new, something collective, something intersectional, true community building where we could live in accordance with the land, with people, with honoring multiple truths, right? We all are tribal. We all come from clans people. Monoculture is the death of us, and that is what we have to release. So, commodified resistance. Just like corporations profited by colluding with fascism, today's article is all about that. I talk about Ford inside of, they were making the vehicles for Nazi Germany, right? When you trace back the banks of today, Bank of America, Chase, Wall Street, the first commodity traded on Wall Street were Black bodies. That's the first stock ever traded, right? It was an auction block. Wall Street was an auction block. So again, when you turn around and you look at American exceptionalism and they have like the New York Stock Exchange, I'm from New York. That is a building that is like, wow, look at, this is what America was built on. Look at this amazingness. And it's like, but you forget the whole truth is that the very first things traded were people, enslaved Africans. Right? When you think about life insurance policies, a lot of people didn't make the middle passage, but the owners of these people got wealthy because either way they were cashing in. If they died, didn't matter. Life insurance, the blueprint has not changed, right? Wealth in the United States of America is achieved through the stock market, ownership, and life insurance, right? Like if you go to any business class or marketing sort of class, the Vanderbilts and not the freaking God, Rockefeller. Rockefeller and the Vanderbilts are used. The Vanderbilts are considered a story on how to lose wealth, whilst the Rockefellers show you how to concentrate wealth. You can literally look up the Rockefeller method, and it shows you how they maintain their wealth through proper life insurance policies, stocks, and ownership, like of homes and properties. Nothing has changed, guys. Nothing has changed. So we have to really start questioning all of those things. So anyway, just like corporations profited by colluding with fascism, today's capitalism profits by selling us the appearance of resistance, right? It becomes an economy of false allyship. So if you have the United States president making executive orders against anti-fascism, ask yourself why. If America has always been an anti-fascist nation, why all of a sudden is being an anti-fascist a problem? And the quick answer is going to be, well, we now live in a fascist government. A deeper answer is the Klan has risen to power again. And yeah, they don't want you to come up against them, but they have always operated this way. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. It just depends on who's telling you whose lens is it, right? So when you do that, I want you to recognize that that is an internal war yet again on whiteness, because Black people and Indigenous people have always represented anti-fascist ideas. Our sheer existence is anti-fascist, right? Still going up against the systems, right? When you think about, Black leaders, Indigenous leaders who have always pushed against the grain, whoever's always spoke against it, the Black Panthers invented your free school lunch, WIC programs. If you ever had a free lawyer, you could thank the Black Panthers, ambulance, inoculations. All of those things came out of the 10-point plan of Black Panthers. That was anti-fascist. So they invented the COINTELPRO and killed off a lot of these Black leaders who believed in working together and collectivism, right? That is a very indigenous practice. To work collectively is an indigenous practice. And remember, you guys are indigenous to somewhere. This is not to leave white body people out. This is to remind white body people that you were indigenous to somewhere. Ask yourself, who were you before you were white? Before you were demanded to assimilate, to conform, to throw everyone under the bus, even your own selves, right? Collectivism is a very African and indigenous practice. And anti-fascism is just a part of who we are as an existence, as a resistance, as a people. So now when you have the president who is absolutely running this fascist nation, um, saying that anti-fascism is illegal, that's an internal war. They're coming for you, white people. And I want you to know that. Like, they're coming. They're coming for your children. You remember the poem, right? Then they'll come for you. Like, they're coming for your autistic kids. They're coming for your queer kids. They're coming for your trans kids. And they just were waiting. I remember watching Schindler's List as a child. My mom had me watch it, which is an insane thing to think about right now, but very important. They know. They know. It's going to be a lot harder, white people, for you to assimilate, right? Because they have, you've pushed forward your anti-trans bills. You're out there in the open with your autism and your neurodivergence, and I love that. Stay there, stay in that fight, because for the first time in history, you are actually going to feel what it is to be hunted, to be wanted. And you can have a choice, right? This is the same choices your ancestors were given. You are going to either assimilate, or you're going to get some solidarity and actually fight for your right to survive. Because that is what Black and Indigenous people have been doing in this land forever. That is what Indigenous people globally have been doing since colonization, fighting for their right to simply exist as is. That is the truth. This is such a heavy day, isn't it? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please drink water. Take breaths. Move your body. Um, So, like I said, continuity. We see the same playbook today. People are told to blame the immigrants, welfare queens, trans kids instead of billionaires and corporations hoarding the wealth. The reflection question I offer is when you feel anger about injustice, where is it being directed at your neighbor or at the system? No, that was talking point 2. We are at 3. I'm so sorry. From gilded luxury to the liberal merch, commodified resistance is where we were at. So I said the loop goes myth, merch, money, amnesia, repeat. Allyship becomes branding and not risk, right? It's the blue bracelets. It's the telling people that you're an ally, but we're not seeing allyship. It is no skin in the game. And you guys now have skin in the game. Because what are you going to do? These new kids are amazing. They are not backing down. They are not going to go into the closet for your survival. They are not going to not have their needs met. They are a very powerful generation. And I love that for them. They are not scared. They are not backing down. And I want us to know that we are doing this work to protect them and future generations. So, what does that look like to come alongside your children? Right? Stop talking about you're going to come alongside Black people. We like every single time that allyship has fallen flat, right? Every single time where there needs to be skin in the game, it gets dropped for safety. So now that they're coming for you and your kids, I want to see you out there. I want to see you really being allies to your children because they're coming. They are. And this is not meant to be, this is not scare tactics. This is saying, what are we doing? How are we really truthfully coming together? What does solidarity look like, right? The reflection question for this, I apologize for the misstep on the other one, is how can you tell when allyship is real solidarity versus when it's being sold back to you as a product? So if you're walking around with your cool Antifa shirts, original since 1901, just it's so fucking exhausting. I want you to think about what does that look like to us? What does that look like to the global majority? That you believe that you guys are the original anti-fascists. What does that look like? How do we feel? Can we trust you? Right? Can we trust you? Where's that money going? To all the merch that you're making, are you lining your pockets or are you pouring into Indigenous sovereignty? Are you pouring into Black educators? Are you building micro schools? Are you pouring back into community building? Or are you just making money in capitalism, which is not new? That is not new, and it's not allyship. So I did offer some praxis today because I was like, this is heavy and I should give you guys some actionable steps and not just leave you like with a lump in your throat and weight on your chest because that is not the goal here. It is just, we have to be real and we have to be aware. And I really want us to think about how other people are receiving these messages that are being delivered. Because every time we see something like that, it is literally a kick in the teeth. It is literally a kick in the teeth. And when we have a discussion about it, we have to go through all of the same things again. We have to go through the defense. We have to go through the what am I going to do? I'm so sorry. I just can't get anything right. And we have to go through all of this. And it's like, God, we are tired. We are exhausted. And it's like, please, I understand that we're going to be defensive, but please trust that we are just trying to get to the other side all together. It is not to bash you. It is not to push you away. It is to simply say, stop. Just stop. Just stop. And let's be more intentional. Let's go deeper because you're still using whiteness as your main frame lens, and that is a problem. So, praxis for today. Name one myth that you've been sold about progress that you now see was a cover story. Share it in the comments. You could do that here. You could do that on the replay. You could take this and do it on your Facebook, your social medias, in your groups. I have, communities on Facebook. Let's further this conversation, right? What does look like progress that you now know is not, right? And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Just know that it's okay to have believed that this is progress. That's why I shared, right? Lisa said the sharecroppers. Yeah, one would think that that is progress when the foundation is enslavement, right? They thought there was progress when people were getting paid $1 an hour. Is progress? Yes, when free labor is what built this, right? But everything gets tied to those sorts of things. Fighting for $15 or a living wage is difficult because free labor built capitalism. Ariana says, I thought racism was gone as a kid. Right. You believe that, right? Like, what? I don't hate this person because of X, Y, and Z. Lisa says, because my great grandma was one. Right. And you're not, right? I shared on Monday, right, from these two lenses as the granddaughter, just the granddaughter. My grandparents came over from Ireland in the 50s. American exceptionalism feels real. I'm a homeowner. I'm college educated. I'm doing the work that I love in the comfort of my own home. That that seems like progress, right? But again, the foundation is hell. The bar is in hell. So it's progress only because the bar is so low. If we had a different expectation, it wouldn't be, right? Ariana's PBS had me fooled. I love PBS, but I think that even then, right, and progress is slow moving because of the lens that you're coming from, right? Tiffany says that votes for women meant all women. That's a great one. That's a great one, Tiffany. I remind people all the time, I'm white women. No, women got the right to vote. Pause. White women got the right to vote, right? Or I love when feminism comes up and it's like, women fought for the right to vote. I mean, work. I'm like, which women? Because Black women have been working since we were drug off that boat. Okay. We're fighting for the right to stay home. And there was a point in time where white women were going into the workforce and they made it illegal for Black women to not. And so guess where we had to go work? For the white women to go be nannies and watch their kids, right? But that looks like progress from a white feminist lens. We got jobs. We've never stopped working. You got jobs. You wanted that. And all that did was create competition between white men and white women and left all of us still fucking grasping for air inside of capitalism. And now everything costs more because y'all wanted to go to work. And that is because the bar was in hell and white women were the property of white men. And that is the only way that you guys understood freedom. So I get it, right? That's the multiple truths. Melissa says, I was taught MLK was the good one and Malcolm X was the bad one. Mm, I love that truth. I love that honesty. It was given to me that way, right? Because again, we're all indoctrinated into the systems of the education of United States of America is indoctrination, right? And Malcolm X looks like the bad one because he was like, I'm not with none of that shit. I'm here for Black nationalism, Black sovereignty. We want to be left alone. And really all he wanted was to uplift Black people. Listen, leave them alone. Let them do their own thing. We do our own thing. And whenever we were doing our own thing in that separate but equal, here came white people to bomb, threaten, murder, maim Black people, right? That's never not been the case. And MLK is given as the good one. And I still want us to remember that MLK died. Sorry, MLK was murdered while still being considered an enemy of the state. Okay. He was not a good guy, according to the United States government. He became a good guy when you gave him a bad guy, right? He became a good guy, again, deified in death, right? By a system that hated him. He was then because look at this guy. He liked white people, right? White people love to quote some MLK. I'm like, I love how y'all never quote, I fear I've integrated my people into a burning house. Go read Letter from a Birmingham Jail and then quote me some MLK, right? Malcolm X. They also never tell you about the story after Malcolm X came back from his Hajj and he's seen all types of people praying to Allah. And he was like, okay, well, we could do this collectively, right? As soon as Black people were into collectivism more so, right? That progress, They were murdered. Fred Hampton was 21, I believe, years old. But he was out there like, no, listen, he got the poor whites together, he got the Puerto Ricans together, he got black folks together. He's like, we're gonna do this together. Look up the Rainbow Coalition. Right. And they murdered him. They came straight up in his house and shot the shit out of that little boy. It's a little boy. Tiffany says, I have a sweatshirt that says votes for women, and I didn't realize until you explained it. And now I don't wear that shirt out of the house. Put a little put a little X, all women or something. I don't know. But right, like that is it. And like, so when we see these things, it is just like it's like I'm literally just like running all of the fucking progressive white people in like on my Facebook feed with this fucking, original Antifa. And I'm just like, we can't progress if we got to keep doing this. We can't. Like we can't move forward to true community until we dismantle these lies and the indoctrination. And thank you for understanding that and not because like yeah, it just tells us that you're not listening. It's just like that's because it's just not true, right? Ariana says, I thought international church missions were helping people of that country. Yikes. That's another great one, right? Missionary work is modern day soft crusades. You're going into somebody else's place where they absolutely have their own culture, and you're telling them that they're savages and heathens, and unless they accept Christ, they shouldn't eat. By the way, they're not eating simply because they're being destabilized by most likely the United States of America. I thought it was normal for bases to exist around the world, but there's not one other country's base inside of the United States of America. Why is that? And then we wonder why we have Cop City. Chickens coming home to roost. That's Malcolm X, right? You want to be fighting Cop City, but we literally exist in other people's countries. That's a Cop City. How do they feel? How are they experiencing the United States of America? And that is something very, very important. Mother Teresa, without holding pain meds from her dying patients. There you go. Like, there's so Gandhi, right? Like there's like I hated waking up to all of these truths. And this is not to say that every single person, I promise you, there's gonna be things you'll find out about me that you don't like, right? People are always turning around. They're like, oh my God, I love the way you parent. You're such a good mom. And I'm like, well, one of my kids doesn't think so. She doesn't even talk to me, right? And when I shared the estrangement between me and my eldest, I literally say, I don't get to say how she experienced me. And that's it. That's all I am seeing is recognize that you do not get to say how other people are experiencing who you are, how you show up in the world, what your merch is telling us. You do not get to say that. You do not get to dictate that. And when we are telling you how we are experiencing it, what you then do not get to do is collapse into self loathing. I can never do anything good enough. I don't know what to do. Listen, listen. No. No merch. I said that with the Roby no merch. No, maybe no merch. Let's just try no merch. Let's start there. Let's start with no merch. Let's build communities. If you want somebody to spend $20 on a t-shirt, I love that. I have merch too. I get it. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I only have merch. Notice I don't even really be pushing the merch because I have merch just because sometimes people want something. And I'm just like, okay, I really would much rather you buy a learning product, a digital download. And most of that is still pay what you can because I'd like for it to actually do something. You wearing a t-shirt of mine is not going to do anything. But okay, I guess, but that's why mine is like rebel culture wear, right? Like anti-fought with like the indigenous people and Africans, if there's gonna be some. But like, try no merch. Try if you want that, like start a mutual aid fund, right? That's gonna actually go somewhere. That find a mutual aid fund that's already in your area. Find a Black and Indigenous led community center that is doing the work, that is already funding these sorts of things that need more people, that need more finances. That's community building. Right. If you are doing merch, because I get it, you got to survive capitalism. Okay. Can you say 10, 15% goes into community building? right? Like, these are the things. This is the yes and. Do do do. Tiffany says that Thanksgiving is celebrating a peaceful transition. Yeah, that's a huge one, right? Like, me too. I remember I'm old enough that we were still making Jesus Christ. We were still making the Indian headbands with the fake feathers. Do you guys remember that? Like, is anybody like old enough for that? Like, we did that, right? And we were woo, 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 in class. We still believed in the pilgrim story, right? And again, who's telling the story? Yes, Tiffany's old enough to remember that, right? So ask yourself these things when you see it, just question. All I'm asking you guys to do is question a little bit more. Who's telling the story? Who? And multiple truths exist. I'm sure they believe that that was a peaceful transition. I'm sure the pilgrims did. Maybe I don't know. Like, if they can. But if they're seeing themselves as the benevolent ones, right? As these white saviors, look at me bringing Christ to your land. I'm sure they do believe it to be true. That doesn't make it true, but multiple truths exist, right? So that's what I'm asking you is as we're moving through these things and it's just every day just feels like it's getting like more and more work and muck to deal with. Just ask yourself that. Who's telling the story? And how are other people experiencing me? Those are the main takeaways. Who's telling the story and how are other people experiencing me? Because if we're really going to get to collectivism, if we're really going to get to community building, that is what we have to recognize, right? You know, and I think that the best way to touch on that is I think that we have all come from parents that have been harmful, right? Did their best, a lot of things, but just generational trauma passes down. I have an article I wrote last year about that. I'll add that into here. Generational trauma passes down. So when you turn around and you think about multiple truths, your parents will turn around and say they did everything for you. Right. I love them. I listened to them. I was here for them. And they probably feel that that is true. And that is not your lived experience. Right. That's that micro macro, right? Like macro, micro, right? Inner world, outer world. So if you know that your lived embodied truth can be distorted by people who are that close to you and love you in their own ways, how much more powerful would it be if they had a platform for thousands of years? How much more powerful will their story be if they were able to implement that story into every single facet of life? And then when you told your story, who would believe you? That's the best way. I think it can truthfully be embodied in that sort of way. Tiffany said, for years, I've worn my You're on Native Land hat to Thanksgiving, and it literally pisses my husband's sister off. She thinks I'm being negative. I'm like, that's not negative. That's true, right? You're on Native land. It's just the truth. And I'm just not offended by truth, right? I'm just not offended by truth. Yes, I live on native land because I get that too, right? It's like you talk about this, but you live on native land. Give your home back. I'm like, that's not what land back means. And I had to ask that question too. I'm very transparent because, like, I asked that question. I'm like, somebody needs to explain. I asked on TikTok a few years back, and an Indigenous person got on there with me, and we've had conversations, me and a few people from various Indigenous nations. I'm like, you need to explain land back to me because I'm not giving up my house. I'm like, it's not happening. No way, no how. And it's really about turning over the care of the land to the indigenous people. And you are on native land. And people understand that elsewhere. You understand if you went to if you went to Ireland, you know you're in Ireland and that's the land of the Irish. Like, this is not the hardest concept in the world, right? It is difficult here in the United States of America because of American exceptionalism. So I am super over my time, and thank you for giving me so much of your time today, and sitting again with all of these very heavy truths, right? So I want us to just think about that this is not an anomaly. This is a blueprint. It's consistently playing out, and we have to disrupt it, right? And I hope that the last little lesson that I gave about embodied truth really lands and helps us become something more true for you. So you are aware of how you are being experienced in the world because it is super important to get to solidarity, right? And in order to get to solidarity, you have to recognize how you are being received, how you are being experienced, and how you can acknowledge that, right? Without self harm, without self shame, without getting wrapped up in that, right? Like it's not that. It's just understand that you're being experienced in a completely different way than you believe and hear that. Listen to that truth, right? And then move through it. Okay, what does that look like? How do I do better? I'm interested. I'm really interested. And more than interested, I'm invested and show how you're invested. All right. That is going to be it for the day. Okie dokie. So we're going to keep peeling back these layers, but I want you to touch yourself and ground yourself. I have to get to my psychosomatic classes. And just know you're doing big work. Drink water, move your body, deep breaths. Love you. I'll be back on Friday. I think Susan is joining me with Friday with Friends, and that's going to be fun because she's going to get into something like body work and stuff. I will check and I will know. I'm not sure right now because, I'm just not. Okay. Bye. I love you guys, and I will see you soon. Mwah.